Hey there, RosterWatch Nation. It's your friendly neighbor Trashman, back with my first rookie spotlight of the off season. And it's a good one. I guess depending on how you look at it, it's an interesting one, to say the least. Um, Then we'll be talking about Johnny Wilson, wide receiver out of Florida State. The most, I guess, auspicious thing about Wilson, and you'll notice it if you see him on tape or in person, whatever it is that he is a massive human being. 6'7". He would be the tallest wide receiver in the NFL entering this season. Bigger than like a Calvin Johnson, taller at least. 237 pounds. It's unverified, but he's got 10.25-inch hands. And another crazy thing about Wilson is that he is projected to run like a 4.5 40 or thereabouts, maybe even faster, which is pretty incredible considering his size. So like I said, you take one look at him and you know why he's an intriguing prospect. You know why teams will be champing at the bit to have this guy on their team. You throw in his deceptive speed, and actually he's got really good agility too. And you have like a visual feast on the field. But for all of Wilson's massive range and catch radius, he can actually play pretty small. He can get pretty small. He's really nimble in tight spaces, and he can maneuver his monstrous frame with ease. You know, he can make the catches in the tight spaces. He's got a little wiggle to him. He's able to adjust to the ball and can make some magnificent, like, what other people might consider circus type grabs. But this is also where Wilson's size can work against him, as he gets targets that a lot of quarterbacks might not risk with smaller receivers. And he misses his fair share of those. He had a 12.8 drop rate, which isn't great. And this is partially because he shouldn't have been throwing a lot of those balls in the first place. It's one of those things where the quarterback just kind of throws the ball up where he thinks the guy can get it. And Wilson can't always get it. So he has suspect hands a lot of the time, even though they're big, strong hands. He played at Arizona State for 2 years before coming over to Florida State, where he had 2 relatively productive seasons. His junior season, 43 catches, 897 yards, 5 touchdowns. So the following year, not as good, 41 receptions for 617 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yes, there's one thing that you probably noticed, and that he did not score a lot of touchdowns. And I would expect a player of his physical stature, to be able to, or to be used as a red zone target to score a lot, to be more fruitful in scoring situations. So that's a concern. Wilson was used to stretch the field sometimes, but he was used as more of a possession receiver by the Seminoles. He played out of the slot a fair amount. He's basically like a tight end wide receiver hybrid. When he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's an inconsistent blocker, though. Sometimes he bulldozes his defender, but other times he kind of gets, stymied by smaller corners that he shouldn't get stymied by. Wilson has exceptional athletic ability, but he's still not a complete prospect. He needs to sharpen his route running, and that's hard too. A guy his size to have sharp routes, it's going to be an uphill battle. And he needs to improve his blocking in addition to shoring up those drops that we talked about. That being said, Wilson could be a major force to be reckoned with in the hands of a team that can properly develop him. As far as his fantasy outlook goes, Wilson's size alone will entice, some team with stars in their eyes to pick him up. If he runs a decent 40, which he's expected to, his odds of going the first or second round increase dramatically. I think he's not likely to fall past the second round, even though He's honestly more of a third or fourth round prospect at this point. Once he's on the field, I envision a couple of trajectories for Wilson. One, he could either develop into a decent chain mover with some upside as a red zone target, a la Alan Lazard, another big guy who stretches the field every now and then. Or he could continue to struggle catching passes and falter like, say, Quentin Johnson, somebody who, I was gaga over last year as a prospect, but didn't really pan out, at least in his first year in the NFL, continued making a lot of drops. The receiver depth on whatever team Wilson lands on will play a big role in whether he becomes a consistent fantasy asset. He could end up being a team's everything or a team's side hustle. So there you have it. Johnny Wilson out of Florida State. I like him. He's got some really crazy athletic ability, but we'll see what he can do. We'll see if he can develop into a consistent fantasy producer. So there you have it. My first rookie spotlight of the offseason. Johnny Wilson out of Florida State has been the Trashman on behalf of RosterWatch.com. Until next time, be ready.